Oh, hey YouTube! It's the Terminator. I'm back with another bodybuilding video for you. Hey guys, what's up? It's the Terminator here. Just wanted to discuss about Big Ramy and why, in my opinion, even though he's a freaking beast, and when he brings this combination of size and conditioning like he did at this year's Mr. Olympia, I mean, he has all the tools to, on paper, dethrone Mr. Olympia, to beat Phil Heath and seize that crown, the Sandow, the title of Mr. Olympia. I mean, he's got pretty much the complete package. If there's anybody competing today that's a legitimate threat to Phil, it's this guy. You could argue also Kai Green, but as we've seen in the last couple years, it seems like Kai's pretty much called it quits at the Olympia stage. Seems like he's boycotting the Olympia now. So, and in any case, what I wanted to discuss here was why, even though when you look at the physique alone, guys like Ramy and Kai should pose a serious, serious threat to Phil. But at the end of the day, there's something called politics that's going to hold both these guys back. Now, what you got to consider is that bodybuilding is not like other sports. It's not like whoever scores the most points wins. Whoever gets the most goals or shuts out the other team is going to be the winner. It's not objective like that. It's very subjective because you have these individual judges who are all just humans like you and me. We all have our own kind of preferences, our own personal biases in terms of what we prefer in a physique. Look at this guy, and he can dance too. I mean, can Phil do that? I don't think so. Anyway, man, I'm actually gonna run out of footage here because I think it's gonna switch to another guy soon. Let's just roll it back here for a bit. Maybe we can freeze frame some of these shots. So let's. He's really brought up his back in recent years. I mean, this is an elite back double bicep now. Whereas in the past he was kind of lacking a lot of detail in his back, but he's really brought it up. It's still not quite at Phil Heath's level in terms of the full development and the detail, that 3D effect. I mean, he doesn't quite attain that level of development yet, but I mean, he's still only like, this guy's pretty much a noob still when it comes to the pro bodybuilding scene because he's only been training for like, I think since around 2009 or so, believe it or not. So, I mean, fuck, I've been training longer than this guy and I'm only 29. So I mean, but my physique is nowhere near this, obviously, or I'd be up here on the stage. But so I'm not knocking Ramy, but I'm just saying, he hasn't had much time to really hone in on his weak points and bring up lagging body parts and really get that full muscular development all throughout his body, like a lot of the other guys have. Like Phil's been training since, well, he's been a pro since 2006, I believe. So he's had an extra 6 years in the IFBB competing in the top shows over Ramy. And, that's going to show. You're going to notice details like that. So that's one reason that Ramy is not truly a huge threat quite yet. Even though, even though he smokes him on size, he's going to kick Phil's ass and pretty much anybody's ass when you're talking about the size game. I don't even think Rolly can. I mean, Rolly came out like a huge monstrous behemoth this year. And even for the last couple of years, he's really become a huge freak when it comes to the size. But Rolly's only like 5'6" or 5'7", correct me if I'm wrong. Whereas Ramy is around 5'10", so he's got like 3-4 inches on Rolly. And when you're that much taller, everything's a little bit, your limbs are a little bit longer and bigger. Like you just have more potential to put on mass and to out-muscle people when you have the height advantage. But anyway, back to my original point about politics. So let's go on to another shot here while we're at it. So when it comes to the IFBB, I mean, they heavily favor certain guys, right? If you're in their good books, you're going to place well. It doesn't really matter what you bring to the show at a certain point. I mean, just look at certain guys like Branch Warren comes to mind. He's a prime example of this favoritism. Because, for years he wasn't placing that great. He'd always be kind of in like, the top 10, maybe cracking top 6. And then I think it was around 2008 or it might have been 2009, 2009 for sure. Because that year he really took a huge leap forward and he leapfrogged a whole bunch of dudes and placed second to Jay Cutler. And that includes beating the former previous year's Mr. Olympia and Dexter Jackson, who came in third. But up until that point, he wasn't really placing that well. He wasn't even discussed as a threat. Everyone was speculating about the top 6 that year in the 2009 Mr. Olympia, and Branch's name just didn't really come up. Everyone was mentioning Kai, Phil, Dexter, Jay, Victor Martinez, I think, was among discussion, and guys like that. But no one was really talking much about Branch. And then he just comes out with, in my opinion, he came out with a really solid package. It was his best physique ever, and maybe I'll do a video on that one day. But anyway, and after that point, once he kind of got his foot in the door, he could pretty much do no wrong in the judges' eyes. I mean, he was collecting Arnold Classic victories over, very good versions of Dennis Wolf. And, a couple of those, probably both of those victories are debatable for sure because, Branch, while he does have that crazy dense muscle, that graininess, the hard and crazy conditioning, he really lacks when it comes to aesthetics. He's pretty much the anti-aesthetic, if you ask me. I mean, there's nothing pleasing to the eye about that guy, and his physique doesn't flow well whatsoever. He has almost no separation between certain body parts, like for instance his shoulders and his chest just kind of fuse together. You don't see any kind of cuts, any kind of separation between the front delt and the pec. That's just one example that comes to mind, but any way you look at it, the guy is not a shapely dude, and when you're lacking that much in the aesthetics department, I really don't think you deserve to be a champion at any level, like period. I mean, if you got an ugly physique, I don't care how grainy you are, I don't care how dense your muscle is, I don't care how amazing your condition is. You don't deserve to be a champion when you don't look good. To the average person. When the average person looks at your physique and their first reaction is like, ew, what the fuck? I mean, is that really the image you want to be promoting and endorsing for your sport? Anyway, back to Ramy. So like I was saying, politics plays a huge role because, what I started bringing up Branch's name for is because once he got his foot in the door, once he placed second at the Olympia, it's like he could do no wrong. And basically for the last several years, he didn't compete in this year's Mr. Olympia, but for the last couple of years, like in the 2015, 2014, potentially 2013, I don't really remember what he looked like in that show, but he just was not anywhere close to his peak condition. He's had injuries over the years. His body's been through a lot of wear and tear because, he's been training for over 20 years, right? And his training style, have you seen that guy's vids? He just doesn't give a fuck, man. His form is completely effed up. And he's just swinging weights all over the place. He's using tons of momentum. He's cheating the fuck out of every rep, They say, control the weight, mind-muscle connection, go slow on the negative. None of these things with Branch, man. It's just like, how many fucking reps can I pump out? How fast can I crank out 20 reps with this, ridiculous weight? That's pretty much what he trains like he's like Rabbit or something, man. The guy's an animal, and you gotta respect him for his hustle, I guess, for his work ethic, because like, yeah, he kills himself, like almost literally, but at the end of the day, this is bodybuilding. This isn't powerlifting. This isn't about how much weights you can throw around or trying to impress anybody. This is what your physique looks like on stage. And Branch's physique on stage for the past couple years has looked like shit. If we got to be honest, man, there's no way the guy should have been in the top 10 the last couple of Olympia appearances he made. He was beating out guys that looked just so much better than him. Like, William Bonac comes to mind. I think he beat fucking Rolly like last year, right? I'm pretty sure he was it last year's Mr. Olympia, the 2015, or was that 2014? He was beating Rolly Winkler, and it's like, come on, guys. Like, this is the sort of bullshit politics that goes on at the Olympia, though. You know? And this is one of the reasons why we've had so many screw jobs over the years, Prime example of this, one that springs to mind because I was watching it, live back when it happened, 2007 Mr. Olympia, when Jay Cutler came in soft and watery, and he had terrible condition. And Victor Martinez looked, 100 times better. He was much sharper, and he was just as full, but with far better detail, and yet they give it to Jay, right? I mean, that was completely undeserved, and everybody knew it. Guys like Flex Wheeler were calling it out, calling bullshit. Everyone was saying bullshit. And the reason was, apparently there was rumors circulating that, Muscle Tech, the supplement company, was threatening to pull their sponsorship of the Olympia if one of their athletes didn't win the title that year. So there was apparently enormous pressure on the IFBB to, give it to somebody who was sponsored by Muscle Tech, and the closest guy at that show was the reigning Mr. Olympia, Jay Cutler. So they're like, "Oh, here you go, buddy. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Yeah, you won this fair and square." So I mean, and we saw it, at the 2014 Mr. Olympia as well. When Phil came in with his distended belly, he completely mistimed his prep. His midsection was all out of whack that year. And in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinions, Kai Green was looking way better than Phil, and he deserved to take the title, yet they give it to Phil. So, I'm not a Phil fanboy by any means. I think Phil is one of the best bodybuilders of all time, and I was ecstatic when he won the 2011 Mr. Olympia because, he looked phenomenal that year, and he's certainly more aesthetic than some of these mass monster types like Jay and Ronnie that have been dominating the sport for over a decade at that point. So yeah, I was definitely excited when he won the 2011 Mr. Olympia, and I would agree that he's deserved the majority of his Olympia wins, but not that 2014 one. And this is what I mean, guys. Like the IFBB, let's cut to a different shot here. Maybe one from the front. Sorry, I can't multitask. I'm a bad multitasker. It's really hard for me to talk about something while I'm trying to find it. Okay, there we go. Yeah, this guy's arms are crazy though, right? Like Phil Heath has good arms, and probably better overall than Ramy's. But Ramy's, when he's full, they're much bigger. I'm pretty sure that I don't know what these guys' arms are measuring these days, man. Because I've heard Phil in videos talk about how his arms are 22.5 or 23 inches or something now. So what does that make guys like Rollies and Ramys and Kais? They must be at least 24, if not 25 inches, 26 inches. Like what? I want to know what these measurements are because historically, 22, 23 inches was about as big as it would get back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. But the guys today are just undeniably bigger, right? I mean, I don't think anybody in the history of the sport's been bigger overall than Ramy. I mean, that's why when we're talking about threats to the crown, Ramy is the front runner right now because the guy he can absolutely dwarf Phil Heath. He can dwarf him. I mean, if he stood in front, you wouldn't even see Phil. He could literally block him out. You wouldn't even completely overshadow him because he's bigger in every department. Maybe calves might be smaller, but then again, the rest of Ramy's so big, his calves would probably be equal to Phil's, even though they look smaller, just because in proportion to the rest of his body, they're underdeveloped. But yeah, I think he's, and now that he's bringing the conditioning and he's able to kind of combine those two aspects of the mass and the conditioning, which, how I mentioned in another video, was, mass conditioning tend to be the two prime factors in determining a winner at a bodybuilding show. And as far as the IFBB is concerned, aesthetics, who cares? Shape, whatever. Symmetry, yeah, to a degree. But I mean, then again, guys like Dorian were winning the Olympia with one bicep. So I mean, how can you really claim that symmetry is all that important when you're awarding guys with one arm? So anyway. So this is just my 2 cents. I mean, I hope you guys don't get, upset. I mean, because I'm just telling it how I see it. I'm telling it like it is, guys. I'm not saying this is right. I'm saying, this is the way IFBB operates, and this is why I don't think Ramy's ever going to win. Because it's the reason, it's not just that they favor Phil. It's that they're not going to give the Sandow to a dude who can barely speak English, okay? They're just not. I mean, even if Ramy spoke perfect English, the fact that he's from Egypt, that I'm not sure if he's considered an Arab. I'm kind of ignorant when it comes to that kind of social, political aspect or whatever you want to call it. International, like my international politics are not strong, guys. So forgive me if I'm wrong to call him an Arab, but they're not going to give it to to a guy who might, a lot of people in North America, like myself, who may be ignorant, would associate with Arabs in the Middle East and stuff. I know he's from Egypt, which is in the Middle East, but whatever. They're not going to give the Sandow. They're not going to make him the ambassador of the sport when he can barely speak English, and he's not white or black. Like, he's not North American, right, or European. So I don't think we've ever had. Has there ever been a Mr. Olympia that wasn't from North America or Europe? I'm not sure. Maybe if you go back, Samir Banu, I'm not sure what his ethnicity was. But pretty much all the guys were from the States, or in the case of Dorian, UK, right? So I just don't see Ramy beating Phil for that reason. Even if Ramy came in and completely, destroyed Phil and, was the undeniable winner, I just don't see him winning. I think the IFBB would do everything in their power to make him lose. Like, they're not going to put him dead last, right? Like, they have no qualms about giving guys second place. They don't, If you're really good, you'll take that second place. But they are hesitant to give out the Sandow to people that they don't fully endorse or that they don't like, for whatever those reasons may be. I think it's mostly political. Like, it's mostly about they want to find somebody who can be a good face for the sport, right? They don't want. It's not just about the best physique. That's what I'm trying to say, guys. And that's what a lot of people seem to forget and overlook when it comes to bodybuilding, is that it's not just about the best physique. It should be about the best physique. That's what it should boil down to, because that's what these judges should be judging on. Is just solely what do these dudes look like, going pose for pose, and in terms of all the the standard bodybuilding criteria that I mentioned before, like the mass, the conditioning, the aesthetics, the detail, the separation, symmetry. Did I say that? Proportion. The coloring, posing, all these things. These are the only things that they should be concerned with, but that's clearly not the case. They've proven it year after year that there's definitely politics involved, and that's why I'm saying I don't think Ramy, no matter how good he ever becomes, no matter if he completely, destroys Phil from a bodybuilding standpoint, I just don't see him winning. I don't. I'm sorry, don't shoot the messenger, guys. I'm just trying to say, like, this is the way I see it. This is how I perceive what's going down in the IFBB and how they operate. So I'm not supporting it by any means. I'm just saying, like, don't get your hopes up for this guy to ever win the Mr. O. Because, they wouldn't give it to Kai Green in 2014, or, you could even argue 2012 he deserved to win, although that one was much closer in my opinion. But if they're not going to give him the Mr. Olympia in 2014, I mean, they're not going to give it to Ramy, ever. Okay, that's my prediction. That's a pretty bold prediction because Ramy's a spectacular athlete. He's an absolute beast, and he has the potential to just destroy everybody. But for political reasons, I just don't see him ever winning a Sandow. Okay, He can go to the Arnold. Like the Arnold's much more open in terms of who it gives the awards to, who they let win the show. But at the Olympia level, for whatever reason, it's just so heavily determined by politics that Ramy has no shot in hell. Okay, so that's just my 2 cents. That's my little rambling rant on the politics involved in the bodybuilding world. So let me know if you agree in the comments. Let me know what you think, and that's all for today, guys. Once again, it's the Tominator, and I'll be back.